I am Sosha Ibrahim and I welcome you all to this webinar on employability, a journey from campus to corporate. This event aims at increasing your knowledge on life after college and helping you understand better the challenges commonly faced during the transition from college to work and to equip the students to face these challenges head on. I would now like to introduce our guest speaker for this event, Mr. Arvind Kamath. After working for close to 25 years in the corporate world in companies like IBM, HP, Infosys, iGate, Aramco, Unisys, etc., and subsequently as a startup founder for 3 years, Arvind pursued his calling in the social sector that is now the purpose of his life. He was a finance and accounting professional for 8+ years who successfully transitioned into the IT industry, playing various roles like business analyst, consultant, program manager, and delivery head for 16+ years. He has wide exposure in the field of ERP, business intelligence, analytics, and bog data in the finance and banking domain. Arvind quit the corporate world in 2015 to follow his passion towards social initiatives focused on education for underprivileged and creation of livelihood in rural villages. Currently, he is on the board of advisors for Happy World Foundation, where he has ideated a unique project to support rural education. He is an active food and travel blogger who has traveled extensively around the globe thanks to the corporate assignments or in personal capacity. His articles related to travel and current affairs have been published in the newspapers like Times of India, Economic Times, Deccan Herald, Bangalore Mirror, and magazines like Lonely Planet, The Week, etc. Arvind is a qualified cost and management accountant, company secretary with an MBA in banking and finance from the CFA Institute. He is PMP certified and also possesses certification in executive leadership from Cornell University. Arvind's mantra for success is be the change you wish to see in the world. We are beyond honored, sir, to have someone with such mesmerizing caliber and experience as our guest speaker today. Thank you so much for being here and we welcome you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Sosha, for the introduction.
All
Please let yeah.
Yes, sir. All queries can be put up on the chat box, and participants, please feel free to ask questions and make this an interactive session. Please raise your hand when you have a question or just drop it in the chat box at the end of every slide, and I will be addressing your questions.
So, shall we start, Sosha?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, I'll be sharing the content. Okay. So, you're able to see now, right?
Yes, sir.
So, what do you see here? You see a small fish pond, and then you see a bigger one here. So, it just shows, from where to where you're going. You're going from the campus to the big bad world of corporate. I would not say bad, but yeah, it's really a very, it's a very challenging environment that you'll be getting into. Since all of you are in the third year, let me welcome you all for this webinar, which is scheduled for 90 minutes. So I'll make it as interactive as possible. And as Sosha said, we are going to take breaks after every slide so that you can ask questions either on the chat box or you can raise your hand and ask the question directly. So whichever option you choose. But let's make it very interactive because you have heard my experience over the years, and please make good use of this forum to ask me any questions that you have to ask, especially when you enter the new corporate world, the challenges that you'll be facing. And I'll give you real life examples or real life incidents. Of course, during the course of this short presentation, I'll also be highlighting some of the real life scenarios that I've come across during my career of about 30+ years now in total. So let's make it as interactive as possible. And after 45 minutes, we are going to take a short break for tea, or you can call it a bio break, very quick interactive. And also, pardon me if my voice is not very clear because I have sore throat for last few days, but I've just recovered since yesterday. So please pardon if my voice is not very clear or you want me to repeat what I've said. So Sosha may have to moderate or maybe intervene and let me know if I'm not clearly heard or understood. So please stop me at every juncture. Let's not make it very formal. We'll make it as informal as possible. I want more interactions. I believe we have 300 students, right? How many we have, Sosha, now at the moment joining the
So
class?
right now we have around 90 students.
90. Okay. So that's a huge number actually. I would expect the interactions to be much more interesting and uh, quite longer, I would say. So we'll make best use of these 80, 85 minutes from now. So this is what I wanted to start with, a small pond going into the bigger pond. So this is what your life is going to be. It's a drastic change that you're going to see as you enter the new world. Maybe in the next year, you are in the third year. Immediately after you complete your studies, you're going into this large world. Um, I'm a lover of statistics, So you have seen, you've heard my profile about analytics, etc. So I'm more a analytics guy. I'm more of a data guy who loves statistics. So I thought, why not bring the statistics upfront rather than coming at the end, and when we are all fresh in the morning. So let's see this slide on the statistics. So very interesting statistics here. I'll just explain. Maybe if you are not able to see it clearly, I'm not sure, but there are three charts here. One chart is about among millennials. Some men want startups. Most women want social sector roles. A majority of young Indians want to have a startup job or work as an independent professional. And the third graph is about a quarter of millennials want to retire by 50 years across sectors. So I'll just talk in brief about these. The Center for Policy Research, or CPR, they conducted the millennial survey online between 12th March and 2nd April of 2020. Actually, this is the time when the pandemic, the COVID-induced lockdown also started, and it covered a sample of 10,000 respondents across 180 towns and cities of India. And there were 5,000 millennials, 3,000 were post-millennials, and 2,000 were millennials. So most of you might be aware about the definition, but I'll just explain in case you are not aware. A millennial is somebody born between 81 and 1981 and 1996, who is now aged about 24 or less than 40, 39 years. And those born after 1996, I assume most of you are the post millennials or Gen Z or Gen Z, as we call them, who are aged 23 years or below. So born after 1996. So you are, I think, falling in this category. I think, all of you. And then there is the other category, 40 years and above, in which I fall, which is called pre-millennials. I think the people born after 1966 and up to 1981, 1980. So these are all millennials. The survey, now you see the graph. Now you pay attention to the graph here. The survey shows that compared to the other age groups, more pre-millennials, that is my age group, they want to work as independent professionals. A large chunk of millennials and post millennials also have similar aspirations, which is really good. But among the younger lot, the aspiration to work in a technology firm or startup is higher. So when I say technology, basically it means IT, the IT job, and also as a startup. So especially in a city like Bangalore, or even if you go to places like Gurgaon or Chennai, Pune, or NCR region, so that's where you find most of the youngsters getting opportunity to work in a startup. The attraction for tech or startup was highest among post millennials from small towns and non-metro cities, which is really surprising because we always thought that only students from metros and tier one cities were attracted to the startup world. But as per this survey, most of the post millennials, that is your age group, they want from small towns and non-metros. They also want a job, a tech job or a startup job. So that is also a very interesting factor that has come in. And among the millennials, 1 in 3 men aspired for a job in the tech companies or startups, which is not surprising. Among women, the attraction for such firms is relatively lower. So again, a very good sign, I would say. Female respondents revealed a strong preference for working as professionals. 31% of them, they wanted to work independently or run their own firm. So most women than men said they want a job in the social sector, social or development sector, which is a very encouraging sign. Because even today, if I see, because I'm in the social sector for the last, I see most women than men being involved in the social sector. If you ask me, my experience or whatever I've observed, compared to men, I would say if there are three, I would say two would be women, one will be a man. So that is the trend that I have seen during my tenure, during my stint for the last 3 years in the social sector. But women normally prefer to be more independent. They want to take up a more professional job and also get into the startup world. Excellent. So I'm sure the statistics will help some of the women or the girl students here to take their decision if you have not taken already. And among those working in the social sector, a relatively large proportion said they want to retire by 50. Okay, this is not a good sign. So I am 50 plus, but still very active in the social world, and I think I have many more years to give back to the society. So that is certainly not a good statistic to tell you. But the social sector also has a large set of people who don't intend or who cannot retire at all. Okay, somebody like me, because once you enter this sector, I say there is no retirement. There should not be any retirement because you have chosen this sector out of your own choice. So there should not be any retirement at all. For respondents employed in the public and private sector, close to 70% said they would like to retire by the age of 60. Of course, there is no other option. They have to retire when they are in the public. 58 is the age normally people retire, and even in corporates, the age is about 50, 58, and some organizations have raised that to 60 of late. So it's not a surprising statistic for me, 70% retiring at the age of 60. So with this, no, I'll take a short, I'll pause here for some time and maybe, look for any questions from anyone, if you have. And Sosha, if you see any questions on the chat box, you can ask me. Or if you don't, we can proceed to the next slide.
Yes, sir, we can proceed to the next slide. There's nothing Excellent. On the chat box as of now.
Yeah, okay. So the next slide is here. So now you're all set. You're all ready to enter the corporate world. You see the small diagram there at the top. Student, then attending a university, school, college, university, and then wearing a suit to the corporate. So don't think everyone wears a suit to the in the corporate world, except when you have meetings with client or maybe some top officials. But today I've seen most of them are in the casual attire. Some coming in jeans or t-shirt, but I will come to that later on the dress etiquettes. So this transition is an ongoing process, so it will not happen automatically. Don't think, okay, tomorrow I'm entering, I'm completely transitioned. It's a long process. Sometimes it may take years to actually, get totally involved in the new process. So what are the things that come to your mind? One is the sense of achievement. Oh yeah, I've got a job, and that too. Then people start comparing. Oh, you have got in tier one company, tier two, tier three, MNC. The Googles of the world. So all kind of things will start. So sense of achievement. Okay, so I've got a job, and then there's also a sense of anxiety as well. Like what will happen? I don't know. I've been like a frog in the well so far. I've been interacting with my friends, in the college. My circle has been limited, and now suddenly I'm getting into a organization, especially if it's a large organization. If it's a startup, I don't think there is so much of anxiety other than the work, but you have that anxiety as well. And then the new environment, location, the learning, a lot of things you will be looking forward to. The new environment, the location, where that location will be. Will it be in my own city, or I have to relocate to some other city? And the learning. Regular source of income and sense of freedom, because that is the utmost satisfaction one will ever get. That no, so far I've been dependent, or there are some students, I'm sure most of you might have interned and also earned some kind of internship fee or a stipend, you might have earned, but you have not got a salary yet, is what I assume. So the joy of taking home an income, source of income, and then the sense of freedom that you'll have. Okay, you don't have to ask your parents to go to a mall or go and watch a movie. So everything. So you're independent, self-made. So you can start spending as per your wish. So that is something that comes to your mind. Managing expectations and meeting up goals. So okay, that is it's a very important point here about expectations, because a lot of students, when they enter into a corporate world, they have a lot of expectations. Maybe due to some false propaganda, or maybe somebody else has mentioned, that this company is like we always say, when the HR guys come on the campus, they just show you a trailer of a movie. When you see a trailer of a movie, you want to see that movie, and only after you see that movie and you say, "Oh, I've suffered for 2 or 3 hours. It was a hopeless movie." So I'm not saying that will be the situation, but when most of the HR guys come on the campus, they'll show you a very good rosy picture. So you'll have a lot of expectations. Okay, I'll go there. I'll lead a life of, like a Google. You have seen the YouTube videos on the life in Google, etc. How they, can open any refrigerator, take the drink of their choice, or they can play golf and so many things. So these are all the expectations that students may have, that no, when I join, these all things will be there for me. So don't set high expectations, go with minimum expectations, and try to achieve goals what are being set in your organization. And this is the 6H model that we all should remember, is that whatever we do in life, this is very important in life: honesty, humility, health, your own health, hunger. This hunger is hunger for work, by the way, hard work, and of course humanity, human values. These are all very important things for you. Okay, so just remember those the 6H model, the six uh, keywords that you see here. So before we move to the next slide, if you have any questions, I can pause for a minute. Sasha, you can interrupt me after every slide. You can
Yes,
do
sir.
that. Yeah, and tell me
Yes,
if
sir.
there are any
Actually,
questions. Yeah.
sir, I had a question, sir.
Oh, you have
So,
good.
yes, sir. So,
Yeah.
when I was reading your profile, you actually have experience of working with so many organizations. So, what made you give up the corporate life and move to, the social sector, which is not as, rewarding in a different aspect. I know probably the satisfaction is rewarding, but what made you give up such a, glorious life?
Yeah. Okay. So it's a very good question. I think I keep getting these questions quite frequently. Just yesterday, somebody spoke to me from IBM itself. That you took a bold step 5 years ago, but we are not able to take that step. Okay, firstly, let me tell you that not everyone can take that bold step. Because you have a lot of commitments in life. Your EMIs. The biggest commitment I say is the EMI. So EMI will bind you. Then you have got your children's education, and then you have the greed. I call it a greed to buy another house, another villa, another bungalow, or I want to buy another property. So all these things, will bind you into an organization where you have achieved everything. So what happened to me, I'll tell you. After 25 years of corporate service in 2015, I started getting this feeling at least 1 year before, that I'm not really happy, doing what I'm doing now. I've reached the peak. Whatever ratings I'm supposed to get, I've got it. Whatever promotions I've got, whichever country I wanted to see, I've seen. Okay, whichever role I want to play, I can play, or I've played. So what is there in life? What is there more that I can get out of this organization other than getting a huge salary packet, and then also seeing the world, leading large teams like 2,000 people, etc. So uh, it's not so easy, to give up these things. Let me tell you that. But you also read about people who have given up everything in life and become monks or become saints. That is also a very tough journey. I have not taken up that journey, to be honest. I have taken up a little soft journey where I said I'll chase the purpose of my life. And my purpose of my life, when I started off with, because I started as a founder of I became an entrepreneur actually for about 3 years, where it was more about setting up an e-learning platform. It was all about education, by the way, live interactive sessions to people around the globe. So my journey didn't start with a social sector yet. It was only after 3 years when slowly I realized through education and all that, when I was to interact with many people, a lot of people who are underprivileged, who are not able to afford the fee and all, then I realized that there is really something that we need to do. Okay, and that's how slowly my purpose of life started shaping up. And then about 3 years ago, I realized that what I'm going to do should benefit the society. It's all about giving back, not just about taking from others. It's also about giving back to the society. And that's when last 3 years I've been involved, in the sector. I started with you mentioned in my profile, Shankar Mahadevan Academy Trust, where we used to do music for the underprivileged, and also we had to go to the villages and have educational based sessions to teach them complicated subjects like math, science in a very fun and interactive way, and more about bringing in art and activity. We did it a little differently. And in Happy World Foundation, it continues. And then here, because here as an advisor, I've also, or rather, it's my brainchild, the project that we started for rural education and women empowerment and creating livelihood for the youth and women, called Project Nyanshala. So this is something that is very close to my heart. Of course, a lot of sacrifices required while coming out of the corporate world and then into the social world. But I think at the end of the day, the satisfaction that you get, that I am giving back, or I'm putting smiles on the face of thousands or maybe lakhs of people, that is something you cannot say it in words. So I took the step when I was in my mid 40s when I quit the corporate world. But I see today a lot of youngsters, early 30s or even mid 30s, or even before they reach 40s, they are taking the plunge. So the duration of stay in the corporates is getting shorter today, if you ask me. I wouldn't be surprised in this batch. Some of you may directly jump into the social sector. I wouldn't be surprised. Or there may be some of you will join a corporate, and maybe after a few years you'll come into the social sector. I won't be surprised to that for that as well. But my only request is, no, there's a lot of entrepreneurship opportunities which are available today, and there's a lot of support that also comes from the ecosystem, from the government, etc. I think most of you should strive to be entrepreneurs. I know you may say 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs fail, but even failure is good. Unless you fail, you can't succeed in life. So at a young age, if you don't have a lot of liabilities or you're self-sufficient, I think you should also choose entrepreneurship, because even that, according to me, is like a social sector, because you're creating employment for others. That's what I would say. So maybe I've answered your question, but in a very long way, Sosha.
Yes, sir. And honestly, that sounds so inspiring. And, I hope that, our students and even me, we have such clear perspectives to life that you do. And so actually another student, Rohan Jacob, has a question. Would you be able to take that now,
Yeah,
sir?
yeah, sure. Are you able
Rohan, you
to
can unmute yourself.
are you able to see me or the slide?
Yes, sir, we can see you, but it's a smaller screen, but we
Okay,
can see
one
you as
second.
well as the slide.
Okay, you can see me
Rohan,
now.
you can unmute right now.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning,
So, as
Rohan.
I was reading your bio, sir, so you have worked in so many different companies in so many different positions. So, how do you go about that, like moving from one job to another job and going to different
Yeah,
positions?
yeah. Okay. Just a minute. I'll just open the because you should see me actually clearly. And just stop the sharing option for some time. I'm happy that these questions are coming up now. You are able to see me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because you should see a large man in a large frame. I mean, physically a large man. So, um, so Rohan, to answer your question, if you have seen my journey, right? I'm a commerce graduate. I think you have heard that. Okay, so I'm like you are doing your BBA. I was a commerce graduate and then did my ICWA, which is now called CMA, CS, MBA, etc. But if you've seen my journey in the corporate life, I started off in the finance and accounting role, and that was a very challenging role, because the company that I joined, which was in the Piramal Group, they had just acquired Ajay Piramal, and today, he's one of the top 10 richest Indian, Ajay Piramal. But that time he was just, I would not say he was a small guy, but he was, he just acquired companies, and I happened to work in one of those companies where it gave a lot of exposure in finance, budgeting, MIS, and most of the output that we used to give was sent to his table directly. So whatever we generated, reports and all, used to reach his table. So he used to read all those things. So you can't get any more pride or any more this thing than this, that somebody, the CEO, is reading it. So it started off with that, and then if you have seen the next journey, again finance and accounting, and then in Ramco, the third company after Unisys, it was Ramco Systems, where I was very clear that after a couple of years I should get into a business analyst role in an IT company, because ERP was thriving. Okay, and they required a lot of these CAs, CWAs to join them as business analysts for finance modules. So that's when I transitioned in the same company. Aramco also had an ERP product, Aramco Marshall, and that's when I transitioned in the same company. And I'm very fortunate that the organization remembered that promise, which was made at the time of an interview, that I will be moved after 2 years. So the promise was done, and then once you taste IT, it's like a tiger tasting human blood. So once you taste IT, it it remained for a long time. So from there, I moved to iGate, and there it was more about the banking domain. I was very interested in banking domain and other than finance domain. And then Infosys happened, and in Infosys the change was drastic because here I was handling a new area, called business intelligence and data warehousing. So it was all, at that point in time, 2004, 2005, it was fairly nascent at that stage, because today you see a lot of people talking about big data, etc. But those days, business intelligence, data warehousing was just picking up. And I happened to be at the right place at the right time. So we always say luck, 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 but there is no such thing as luck, if you ask me, especially in my career. I happened to be in the right place at the right time, and I grabbed the opportunity. Whenever the opportunity came, I grabbed. So same thing in Infosys came my way, which others let off, thinking, okay, I have to travel there, here, there, and all. So I didn't care about it. I even visited Kashmir in 2005, in Srinagar, to meet a client when most of the others were refusing. And you know what happened? In that flight, I was sitting next to N.R. Narayan Murthy, who was the CEO of Infosys at that point in time, 2004-5. So, if I had not grabbed that opportunity and I could not have gone to Kashmir, I have written so many articles on that journey. It was published in newspapers. I happened to sit with one of the idols, NRN Narayan Murthy next to me. So I grabbed that opportunity. I took it up. So after Infosys, HP, again in the same role, but again IBM in 2010 was a little path breaking because here I had to manage the entire portfolio, and there are a lot of people, about 2000 odd people who were part of that, the team that I was building. And again, it's a fairly new area called risk analytics that we are building around risk management. So I was managing not just business intelligence and analytics or data warehousing. It was also about risk analytics, which was again new to IBM in 2012. So again, I grabbed that opportunity when some of them were not willing to take up. And also, most of the foreign assignments that I've taken were not really, rosy. I had gone to Peru, I've gone to very odd places, Sweden. So many other places I've gone where, some people may say, okay, no, that's not for me. I'll go only to the US and UK. Of course, US and UK happened many times, but I always took some amount of risk. So if you have seen Scam 92, he always says, risk hai to ishq hai, something like that. So I am that kind of a person. I took a lot of risks in my life. And interestingly, in 1990, before I started my career, I was also a stockbroker on Bombay Stock Exchange. I was associated with one of the stockbrokers, Ajit Surana, and I was a sub broker to him. So I also dabbled in stocks in 1990 when it was not automated. So you can imagine, my journey. I have not added that in the portfolio. Otherwise, Sosha will go on and on. So it was not a real corporate journey, but it was more like I was just being, or rather, helping someone in the broking business, and being a sub broker at the age of, I was just 22 or 22 at that point in time. Learned a lot of things, a little bit of entrepreneurship even before I entered the corporate world. So whatever jumps I've taken, you may see that no, the jumps are too many, but most of the jumps I've avoided less than 3 years. Most of them are above 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So I ensured that I stayed on for some time where I learned the culture of the organization. I set up a team and then I left. It's not that suddenly I left in between because of some disagreement, or no, it was not like that. It was only after a proper milestone that I've left. And I think if you ask me, if I compare myself with those who have stayed on in the company for 25 years or 20 years, that's a good thing, no doubt. But for me, the advantage is I've seen a lot of companies. I've improved my network, or rather expanded my network to such an extent that no, I know most of the people today in the corporate world, and most of them being my juniors or peers in a very, very senior position, C-level executives. So it becomes very easy for me to get access to any corporate, or when I need funding for the social sector, it becomes very easy for me. So I see that as an advantage where I moved on from company to company. My role improved, my domain also changed. It's not just role, my domain changed from finance to even in IT several domains. So it has been a very interesting journey. And even then, from startup to now social sector. Of course, now I don't think the journey will ever change. It will still continue to be in the social sector for a long time to come till I live on this planet. So that's what I have decided. So Rohan, to answer your question, I'm not sure if I've satisfied your. No, I don't know if you are satisfied with my answer, or you got the answer to your question.
Yeah, so it was really great to hear from your experience, and it was also nice to see your perspective of your own
Yeah.
your journeys and your moves. So thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thanks. Any other question we have from anyone? Because as I said, the slides are very limited, and these are just
No, sir,
placeholders.
not right now. We
Yeah,
can move ahead to the
yeah,
next
these
slide.
are just placeholders according to me. Um,
Good
so
morning,
that,
sir.
yeah, good morning. Somebody,
Sir, I had a
yeah,
question.
yeah, please.
So since you mentioned you worked in the
Sorry,
stock exchange,
your name, please.
my name is Trishul, sir.
Trishul.
Trishul Ganam.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
yeah,
So since you mentioned you worked at the Bombay Stock Exchange, right?
yeah.
So would you think that this would be the right time to make any move or get started?
Okay. um, so don't just go get swayed by the 50K plus and all. I don't know today what has happened to the market, but last 3 days, I don't know. It has reached a dizzying height. People are now saying 55, 60 and all. So don't get swayed by these numbers. But yeah, so when I entered the stock market, I was just about, I told you, 22. I finished my ICWA, by the way. Okay. And the job opportunities were very limited those days. It was either public sector or very few private sectors. IT was not even heard of that time. So I remember when I joined Tata Unisys in '92, people were really skeptical about my move because I moved from pharma to IT. Pharma was high-paying job. IT was not. No, you'll not believe. And today you see where they both compare. So in 1990, when I just finished my ICWA and I was looking out for opportunities, job opportunity, I met a friend of mine who was already involved with a stockbroker who had just come back from Calcutta stock. And he said, no, this is a stock. And I didn't know anything about stock market, by the way. Let me tell you that. Zero. So he used to have multiple sessions with me. He was my college friend, and he used to tell me about all these things: bull, bear, mandi, tezi, and all these terms which were used then. Now it's all automated. Those days it was use of hands. So if you have not seen Scam 92, please see that because you'll get a lot of ideas about what used to happen in that world, in 1990s. And Manmohan Singh was not the FM at that time. So India was just trying to be global. It was not a global economy at that time. Stock market started booming because of Harshad Mehta. Okay, and I don't know, he brought a lot of tezi in the market, and I became a sub broker. Sub broker is someone who is not allowed inside the ring. There is a concept of ring, but you can take orders, and then the broker will execute. And my friend was working for a broker. He used to execute. We didn't have mobile phones. We had only rotary telephones those days. The old type telephones. I don't know if you have also seen those phones. I'm not sure, but those are the phones we used to use during fixed time, giving the order, taking the order. That's it. So that excitement was different. But today, if you ask me, there are a lot of companies, started by Nitin Kamath. He's not, or rather, not a family member, but I know him very well. Nitin Kamath started Zero Da. He started as a startup a few years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, and today, it has become a unicorn, and he's a multi-billionaire today. Nitin Kamath at a young age, he's in his early 30s. So, and he's also creating a lot of jobs for youngsters in this market. So there are a lot of opportunities even in the equity or in the mutual fund because today the opportunities that you get will not be direct like a broker or sub broker. You have to work for large investment management companies or large mutual funds, and that's again a very challenging job, and you may need certain amount of certification or certain amount of education because your current education may not suffice for that because there are a lot of things that you have to learn on the market, on the futures, the derivatives, and equity, and how it works, dynamics. Then there's a lot of research involved. We should not think that market works just on speculation, which used to do earlier. But today markets work on technicals of the company, and then you should also be aware of what's happening globally, because earlier in 90s, India was a closed market. It was not global, as I mentioned. So anything happening within India used to have an impact on the market. But today, if a Greta Thunberg goes with a placard and says, "Kisan, Kisan," you saw that you see that there'll be change in the market sentiment. So it's so sensitive today. Anything that Biden would do in the US will have an impact here, or even China doing something, Russia doing something. If there's a war or Iran is getting sanctions, there is something. So it is not just related to India, but it's also about the world. So you have to be abreast with what's happening around you, around the world. What are the latest happenings? So all these things you have to learn. And also, it's a very, very interesting area, and extremely high paying and extremely high stress. Let me tell you that huge money comes with huge stress. Keep that in mind. I'm telling all of you, when you chase high money, high salary, and all that, you see salaries of Google employees 80 lakhs, 1 crore that they are getting here, right? But the amount of stress they have, that nobody tells you. The kind of stress they have is perhaps 100 times more than what a guy in Infosys may be having, maybe earning much less than him. So there is a lot of stress in this segment, in investment banking or in mutual funds, or wherever you want to go. So Trishul, I hope I've answered your question, but it's a very exciting area. You should try it if you're interested, but you need more knowledge, more education. You need to attend few more, I would say, like IIM organizers, or there are so many organizers which has short courses on these things. So you need to attend those courses, or maybe 1 year, 2 year program, and then get into it. That is my suggestion to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So in this session, I thought I will not talk much about career guidance, but I can still do that, if the question comes up. And I'm also not going to talk about interview, like how to attend interviews, or how to fare in interviews, how to impress the interviewer. You can ask me a specific question, I can answer based on my experience, because I've interviewed so many people in my life, mostly MBAs or IIM, IIT guys. So in my span, so I can give some examples on what to do, what not to do, but it's not covered in my current presentation. So, but you feel free to ask me questions.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, actually, another student wanted to ask a question. Tejas Kauda. Can you take another question, sir?
Yeah, sure. So after this question, we'll take a small break for
Yes,
2 or
sir.
3 minutes. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Tejas, please go ahead.
Yeah, so since the rise of the Sensex points that's happening right now, it's mostly because of FDIs, no, sir?
Yes.
Do you think it's a feasible option for a longer period of time? That will it sustain in the market?
Okay, no, that's a good point you raised. Actually, it's also because of FDI. It's also because of sentiments. Because you saw why it went down. Of course, there were a lot of outflow that happened, FDI outflow. But what was the main reason why it went down during April, May, June? Because of COVID, right? Because there was no vaccine in sight. Okay, when
Yes.
did the first jump happen? It happened, I think, in
Released,
January.
Yes, sir. Once they
Yeah.
released their Covax.
So once all the I think the Pfizer news came first. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Pfizer, and then the Oxford.
Yeah, so
The
they
other
had a
vaccine.
lot of drawbacks, no, sir.
Yeah.
I think
So
ours
sudden,
was the one that didn't have that many drawbacks,
yeah.
at least
So
in the
sudden,
media.
correct. So suddenly the Sensex rose. It was not because of FDI, right? In January, I think December, January timeframe. It was all because of the hope that there's a vaccine coming, and COVID will be eradicated, or whatever, it will be stopped. Or so that was so it worked on market sentiments. So as I said, it works also on sentiments as well. There was nothing to prove that these vaccines are really useful. That these vaccines will really stop corona. Was there a adequate proof? No.
No,
Yet,
sir.
yet it worked on sentiment. So that was one. And the other thing I mentioned is technical reasons, right? Because of certain things, like you saw LIC went up suddenly. Why? After the budget, because the FM announced that we are going to divest LIC. Life Insurance Corporation. It went so that was one. Third, technicals. Like for example, companies like Infosys and TCS, which have been giving excellent results. It goes up by technicals. The moment they say no, we are going to bring down our estimates, suddenly the particular stock will go down, and they are part of the Sensex. The few stocks that decide. It does not say that it is not a barometer of the entire market. Please keep that in mind. Whenever you see 50, 51, whatever going up, it's only those few stocks that are making the market go up and down. HDFC, ICICI, and those IT companies, etc. But there are large amount of large caps, mid caps, small caps, which also go up. But does it decide or does it decide the points rise? No, it doesn't decide, right? So that is one. FDI certainly was one of the major reasons where when the market started moving up and when they withdrew, also it came down. But I would say today the market is very mature because I'm talking about 1990 when I just entered. That was how many years ago now? 30 plus years ago, when it was all based on rumors, speculations, and also one person like Arshad Mehta playing with the market, or somebody like a UTI chairman then playing with the market. They were actually playing in the market. Let me tell you that. I also remember me playing in the market those days. Suddenly a small company, I remember Oroplast, they said ACC is going to take over. A cement company, ACC, is going to take over. And Oroplast was lying at 4 or 5 rupees. Okay, small stock. We used to call it B stock. And suddenly, it went up to 8 and then 10. So 4 rupees became 8 and 10 in just 2 days. And I also played with that stock, and I also made huge amount of money because you could do a lot of these trades where within the settlement you could even complete even without having physical shares, because that time there was no demat. Even physical shares you could sell, or you can even do short selling. Suppose you find that tomorrow a company is going broke, you can do short sell as well. So those were the things that used to happen earlier, but today it all works on market and the technicals, the how the company works, the international environment, how it is, the business environment or political environment or anything that happens with the top countries, and FDI is also, I would say. So
Yes.
Tejas, this is the answer. But I think you need to, if you're interested in this field, it's really good, but you need lot of research, how to become a good investment banker. There's a lot of demand for this kind. A lot of mutual funds are coming. Very high paying jobs, very high paying.
Do you think that there's any correlation between the Covaxin and why we had an increase of FDIs in our market, sir?
I don't think so. Actually, I'll tell you, there's one more reason being China is also contributed to that, because most of these countries which are investing had also a pie in China. Okay, slowly what has happened is the sentiments today are such that, the Quad countries, 4 countries and other countries, they have slowly started to form a cartel against China, and will not push investment. It started with Apple
Yes, sir.
saying that I will come to India. So they are seeing that, next to China, which is the biggest market for us, India.
India.
Naturally, India,
Mhm.
and then Vietnam is also coming up. The other markets in Asia, basically Asia is Korea. These are the countries that are now growing faster than any Western economies today. And they will put money where you get returns. They are not fools. That okay, I'll put in India. I love India. I'll put my money. It's not like that. It doesn't work like that. They are looking at the future prospects, and they know India is a very strong market, resurgent market, and we have a 1.3 billion population. Even internally, the consumption that we have, and today we have a say in the global, scenario. We have a good say, not like earlier when we were not part of so many forums. Today, we are invited to G7, G15, G16. So all these things are happening now, and they see India as a very powerful economy. We are already the fifth. I think we are about to become fourth, but because of pandemic, we slipped down. So we are, I think, sixth. I think, if I'm not mistaken. So we are going to be the top three in the next 10 years. So they see all these things. The future of India, the markets of India, and also China being another threat. So if they want to come out of China, where will they put their money? They have to put somewhere, and that is India. So vaccine and all, I don't see honestly any correlation between that, other than seeing India as a major contributor to the vaccine in the world. And that's the only thing I can see. But other than that, I don't see any correlation, if you ask me. But again, I request that we move away from the stock market now And
Yeah,
because a lot of questions are coming, we can have a different session on this.
sure.
But I would focus more on a lot of career choices you have, career options you have, and also ask me about my experience in different companies. Because as I said, my stock market experience was very limited. I think less than a year. Because immediately in '91 I got a job with Piramal, and then I was just dabbling as an individual investor, but not as a sub broker. So slowly by 94, 95, I stopped the stock market completely. Not before buying a house at the age of 25 in Mumbai. So it's a rarity that somebody can buy a house in Mumbai. So I always say I should thank Harshad Mehta, or I should thank the stock market for helping me get a decent house in Mumbai at a age of 25. So that's all I can say. And I think the next question will take anything other than stock market, if you don't mind. And we'll take a quick break for 3 minutes. One thing I missed out in this was choose a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. So please remember this. The moment you choose your job just for salary, you can't love a job for salary. Let me tell you that. You may think like that, but no. The job should be like I think three of you already talked about the stock market, etc. But then I don't know whether it was love of the job or whether the Sensex is touching 50K or not. But if you love any job that you want to do, like especially in the social sector, you will never think that you're working a day in your life, and that is what makes you more and more happy. And it is very rare, when you go into a corporate, you can say this. You may not love the job, or you may love you may not love your supervisor or the manager, or you may not love so many other things, right? So this is something that is very rare. Maybe you'll achieve when there's some amount of maturity in the role, or in working for some corporates, or coming into the social sector, or becoming an entrepreneur. Especially when you're a startup entrepreneur, this is what you do, because something you'll take up something which you love, and you never feel that you're working a day in your life. So just keep that in mind here. The next one is the aspirations of the freshers. So most of you might be having this right in your mind. Brand, which brand? In IT, Infosys, IBM, Cognizant, TCS. These are the brands. Or Yahoo, not Yahoo. Sorry, Yahoo is gone now. Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Apple. Working for that. That's a brand image that you have in your mind. Work culture. What will be the work culture today? You're exposed to so many YouTube videos on social media showing you about a company's work culture, especially the startups. It will show you people working on the swing, or having coffee, or even going and opening bottle of beer. So all these things you'll see. Okay, oh, that's the work culture. That you will have in mind. Open culture, a very free culture, and I can go in informals to that workplace. The other thing, career growth. What will be my career growth in the organization, or am I going to get stuck there? So how am I going to? As I mentioned, unless you take risks, you cannot rise in your life. That is something that I always believed in. That is most important for your career growth. You can't sit in one place and be in a sweet spot or comfort zone and say that I'll grow. And then most important, the package, and of course the peer comparisons also happen there. तुमको कितना मिला, हमको कितना, like that. No, how much you got? How much I got? I got 6 lakhs. Oh, is it? I got 10 lakhs. Oh, somebody got 3 lakhs. So that package, that keeps running in your mind. What kind of package I should get. But also, again, don't get too much bogged down with package as well, because somewhere where you start small, you could even grow tremendously, over a period of time. So the package also could be momentary, if you ask me. So any questions you can please, because I'm not looking at the chat box, so Sosha will have to stop me, or any questions you have, you can stop me, because I'm ending
Yes,
this.
I'll let you know, sir. We
Yeah,
can
yeah,
go
sure.
ahead to the
Yeah.
next slide. Right now, there are no questions.
Yeah. So here, now that was about you, your perception, but now what about the company? Company is very smart. Okay, they've already done the placement, and some HR guys have already come, done their kind of advertisement, shown you trailers or beautiful, things that they've shown you. But there is an expectation from the management. They are paying you high salary and all these things. But what is the expectation? Commitment, values that you have to bring, attitude, confidence, the knowledge, expertise. Like I mentioned about the mutual fund. You just can't enter there without having some amount of knowledge or expertise. I doubt, because you can't have expertise from day one. At least some amount of knowledge you should have about that particular sector. People and leadership. Now, leadership again, don't think that this leadership means like suddenly you join, you lead a team of 10, 20, 100. No, this is more like they look at the leadership traits. Because even when we used to hire in IBM or even in Infosys and all, when we used to hire very young MBAs, I remember we used to look at the leadership traits of people. You can easily find out like somebody going out of the way and trying to form a group or trying to organize events or trying to bring a group together. And I'm not talking about something like a trade union or something, but somebody who influences others and also tries to lead by example. So these are the skills that we always used to see in youngsters, so that we can groom them to become future leaders. And people management, very important. How you interact with people, how you take people along. And last but not least, passion and pride, which is almost missing today. Like the passion to work for an organization and the pride that you have. Because today, if you see, unlike the previous generations, in my father's generation, he worked for about 41 years in one bank. Did I follow him? No. My average was about 4 years in an organization. Today, the average is coming down. It is 1 or 2 years, maybe a person will spend. So that pride element also may not be so much today. Passion, again, it's a very I don't know, subjective. It depends on what you do. You may not have passion to work for a large organization and contribute to the objectives, but you may have passion when you join a social sector, or if you have start your own company. You may have that passion. But these are the company's expectations, because they need all these things, like one package they need. Okay, and you may not have all of these, but some of them you may have some of these qualities. Now, these I'll just quickly go through that, because these are just small bullets of what you need to follow when you join an organization, and you already know that. You have to develop the right attitude, limit the expectations. I think we spoke about expectations a few minutes ago when we started off. Don't have very high expectations. Go with minimal expectations. Create a first impression, very good impression. Because we always say, even in interviews, right? The first impression is the last impression, because the first one minute or 2 minutes that you spend with an interviewer decides your fate. Let me tell you honestly, not you will be spend the 15 minutes, or I don't know how much time they spend today, 15 minutes or 30 minutes. But if you ask me as an interviewer, my impression was formed in the first 1 or 2 minutes about that person. And the later 28 25 minutes was just getting to know, or telling them about our organization and all these things. But the impression is formed in the first 1 or 2 minutes. We even talk about the elevator pitch. We always, I don't know if you are aware about that elevator pitch concept, where you're going in an elevator, and you're few seconds and you bump into the CEO of an organization, and you're trying to market something to him. So how you impress in those few 10-20 seconds is something that is so critical. So that first impression here, um, building cordial relationship, not just with your team members, with your peers, and even with your managers. So you should maintain that relationship. Be a good follower. I would not say follower doesn't mean that you have to be a chamcha or something. To blindly follow someone. But yeah, initially you have to be a follower. You'll become a good leader only if you be a good follower earlier. You have a good mentor, you have a good guide, or a manager who will help you in your decisions. So be a good follower initially, and throughout your journey also, not just initially. Exploring the organization culture, you should keep exploring and finding out, does it fit into my scheme of things? How is the culture, or can I adapt to that culture? You should try to do some amount of homework there. Developing a work savvy attitude, not being a hard worker, try to be a smart worker, because there are a lot of people who try to impress with their saying that I work hard, I work from this time to this time. But ultimately, your manager wants output, not the amount of time you work. He looks at output. Somebody who works for 4 hours can give the output. Somebody may be struggling for 4 days but may not give the output. And building an organization savvy, that is very important. You carry your organization on your sleeve whenever you go out and whenever you talk. You can't talk no just nonsense or any negative things. When you go out and make a presentation or talk to others, that should be your savvy. And exhibiting professionalism at all times, that is very important. Be extremely professional in whatever you do in your dealings, within the organization or even outside the organization. So can we just take a pause here, because the next slides are going to be a little general. It's all about your communication and other factors. So, Shah, if there is any question, you can stop me. Shall
So
we
we can
proceed?
go on to the next slide,
Yeah.
sir.
So we are good on time, right? It is we are good
Yes,
on
sir.
time.
We almost have another half an hour left.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the challenges for here? You will see both student and corporate. So it's not just challenge for students; it's also for the corporate when they recruit people. Job fit is something which is common both places. Because for you, you'll always think, okay, how do I fit into that job? Or maybe if you're joining as a management trainee or as a fresher, you may not even know what is in store for you. It's all open. It's not like when you go for a second job or the JD job description is very clearly mentioned that you're going to do this, you're going to play a role. But from the campus, what happens most of the time, when a lot of people are recruited, even the role and the function may not be very clear at the start. That all only happens after they provide training or you have to undergo a lot of internal workshops. That's when it becomes very clear where you are going to fit in. I remember in IT, in Infosys or even in IBM, when they joined, they didn't know which stream they're going, like Oracle or SAP or PeopleSoft, or because those were the days when there were a lot of product related verticals we used to have. So when they joined, they didn't even know where they want to go. So only after maybe spending 3 months to 6 months, they'll know where they're heading to. Okay. Then the corporate life is quite different from a student life, as I mentioned. Team differences will always be there. How do you work around those differences, and how do you work in a congenial environment is all up to you with your attitude. Location now in Bangalore, of course, now because of pandemic, there is no such issue because everyone is online and they can log in even from a remote forest if they have good connectivity, or even from a seaside resort or anywhere they can log in. But just assume we go back to normal, the location, especially in a city like Bangalore. Oh, it is so far. I have to, because our public transport is not so good. How do I go there? I have to spend 1 or 2 hours, going, and one or 2 hours coming back. So that is the thing that will go on in your mind about location. Long working hours. I don't believe in long working hours. To be honest, I believe in output and productivity. Long working hours is just to please someone. In the organizations, there are some people who want to be pleased by working long hours. But end of the day, we should look at productivity and what output you give, not the hours that you work. Peer pressure, most important thing, rat race, peer pressure, all these things you have to build into your vocabulary going forward, because peer pressure is going to be very high. Okay, somebody has outperformed me, somebody has got promotion, somebody has got hike of 10-15%, I'm getting only 5. Oh, he is going to the US, I'm not going, I'm still stuck in India. They're sending me to Chennai, but they're not sending me to Los Angeles, or not sending me to New York. He's going. So all these kind of pressures and these kind of tensions will always be there around you. But you should focus on your work, because all these things will happen, will come to you in your life. So when you saw my profile, when you heard my profile, you must be thinking that this guy must have roamed the world right from beginning at the young age. No, in fact, you will be surprised. Okay, the first trip that I did abroad in my life was at the age of 36. When today, if you see a 36-year-old guy, you must have seen almost quarter the world, today in the IT. 36. And then there was no looking back, the kind of countries and continents and places that I visited, unparalleled. I used to live in a suitcase later on, and I also got bored later on. But till 36, did I get an opportunity? But I was looking for others. Oh, he's going to the US, he's going to the UK, he's going to Singapore. Even countries, like Singapore, Malaysia. I am here only. I am sitting here in Mumbai. I was in Mumbai earlier, then came to Bangalore. I am in Bangalore. What am I doing? So all these things will come. But ultimately, I realized that no, if you have patience and if you work hard and if you grab the opportunities, the sky is the limit for you in your job. Superiors' expectations. Now, this is something very interesting. You can't satisfy everyone in this world. You can't satisfy your parents. You can't satisfy your siblings. You can't satisfy your boss. The boss may have a lot of expectations, but his expectations, you can't satisfy everyone. So, but There has to be some middle ground where both he and you, or both she and you, if the boss is a she, you should always be in a congenial environment. There's no point getting into a conflict and meeting some of the expectations. If you're not meeting, you have to state it expressly right ahead that you are not able to meet the expectations, rather than setting false hope to them. Politics, please stay away from politics. You will be tempted often to get into office politics. I mean, not our general politics. I'm talking about office politics. The water cooler clicks and all will keep happening. Chai adda. Okay, no, this is happening. Oh, he's leaving. Oh, no, no, this is happening. Some rumors. All these things will keep happening around you. No, so better to stay away from politics, because ultimately those who get into rumor mongering, politics and all, really find no career growth. You know. And work-life balance. I don't know how to define it. It's very difficult. It all depends on you. How do you manage the work? How do you manage your life? Better time management. So that is all how you manage your work-life balance. So this is something very important. Don't get burnt out so soon. There is a tendency. I've seen some of the youngsters joining a organization, trying to outprove himself or herself, and burning out at a very young age, and then they quit the company, and then they go on a long sabbatical or whatever at a very young age. That may spoil their career, long term career. So don't burn yourself, don't get burnt out soon. Work at a very normal pace. Don't be too aggressive at the start. And for the corporate, the challenges are job fit again, because they don't know. They've hired you now, but they don't know where to fit you. We always say that, right? Square peg in a round hole. So it becomes like that. They don't know whether I'm doing the right thing. I'm putting the round peg in the round hole or what. I don't know. So I'm taking a risk by putting that person. So this happens. The retention of youngsters, as I mentioned, keeping them happy in their work, and many other things about salary and other considerations. So retention becomes, and also the job opportunities available outside. Retention is a big challenge for the company. Monetary satisfaction, giving salaries, unrealistic expectation from job. Again, here I've got a lot of examples actually. Like somebody coming in. I remember somebody coming into IBM on day one asking, "When am I going to the US?" Okay, that was the question that was asked by a youngster who just joined as a trainee. When am I going there? So already the sights are fixed on a particular country. I want to go there because of perhaps peer pressure or family pressure. That no, you have to go only to the US to achieve something in life. So all these things will be there. So don't have unrealistic expectation. The moment I join MNC, I'm now going abroad, or I'm now going to do this, do that. Don't have those high expectations. Keep your expectations minimal. Engaging with employees, it's a very big challenge for corporate. They use a lot of HR policies and all to keep them engaged. Events, weekend events, and so many events that they conduct. This is a challenge for them. Making the job interesting. Okay, it can't be entertaining. How to make the job interesting? Again, that's the biggest challenge for a company, because a lot of work that they may be given could be mundane, or could be people working in BPO. How interesting can you make that job, right? It will be a mundane task. Day in and day out, you have to do that. So that is a big challenge that a company will have in making a job interesting. I think now I'm sure we'll have some questions.
Yes, sir. Sir, actually, there's a question from Trishul. So he asks, Sir, how do companies cope with the attrition rate that they face in today's time and age? Because they spend so much time in recruiting and training their employees, and then after 2 to 3 years, they jump to another company, apart from retention bonus.
So I'll give you some insider tips. Okay, don't tell your company, because I was involved in the leadership, discussions when we are trying to recruit people. So we always had that margin. Like suppose we go to a campus for recruitment, and we are supposed to. I can give an example of Infosys. That will be good, because I was involved in a lot of campus recruitment. Every weekend we had to give away our time. In addition to our work responsibilities, Saturdays and Sundays we used to travel throughout India, trying to scout for talent in various engineering and MBA colleges of India. So we always had a strategy in mind, like that I'm going to hire, say, 100 from this particular university. Don't think that there was a plan to have 100 for the next 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. there was always an attrition plan that was built into it, that we will think, okay, if we are hiring 100, we know that 80 will stick around for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. So that risk or that additional overhead that is always carried by large companies. And I'm talking about large companies here. I'm not talking about the small companies. So even when they plan the initial workshops or initial training program, which could be in Infosys was quite long. Sometimes it will range up to 6 months. So all this thing was factored in, that not everyone will be there with us for more than a year or 2 years, and that too a company like Infosys, where people used to die to get into that company, and our campus was so attractive in Mysore. It was like a mini resort. I would say not a mini resort, it's a full-fledged resort with a theater, 4D theater, and a swimming pool. I mean, billiards or whatever you can play, those kind of things, games, and so many things, tennis, badminton, cycling, you name it, everything was there. Yet attrition was high. Could we stop attrition? No, because that keeps happening. It could be various reasons. It's not just because of better job opportunities. Attrition could also be due to health. It could also be due to family reasons. It could be many other reasons. But the primary reason, 70 to 80% could be a better job opportunity. I don't know what better job opportunity means, but that used to happen. It is not very uncommon. But then, if you look at small companies, if that's where your question comes from, a startup will have a lot of hope on that individual when he hires, when the entrepreneur hires a startup or even a social sector, when they hire, because they don't hire in bulk like large companies. So if somebody, they give a lot of training, they invest their time, they put a lot of money, and suddenly after 6 months or 1 year, this guy says, I'm leaving. Thank you. Or you will not even inform. Today, the culture is one SMS or WhatsApp message comes and says, I'm off. You may not even be bothered about his salary, about his settlement. So that is the trend that I've heard of late, because there are a lot of other job opportunities available for that person. So that's a very bad thing, because don't think that you will escape. Because I know there are some forums where they track, how many years that person has worked, how he has quit, as he got his relieving letter. All these things are being tracked today. It was not there earlier. Earlier you could do that, and it is like a CRISIL report. Today for any application you make for loan or credit card, they'll check your credit report first, your history, credit history. Same thing today. There are bodies which also cover your history in employment as well, and they'll be very wary of hiring you. Suppose you hire in another company and they're having the database, they will never hire you. It is almost like doing a cross check or reference check on you, saying this guy joined, within 6 months he left for reasons we don't know. His employer also has not given the relieving letter, so he's at high risk. We are not going to hire him. So you have to be very careful even while leaving. Leave when no, you burn no bridges. It is for a genuine reason, not just because somebody is throwing more money or giving you a better title or better position, but the job will be the same or job will be worse than what you are doing. So don't take those chances in your life, because initially when you work, my only suggestion is work for a longer duration. I will not say long means 3, 5. I'm not saying that. At least 2 to 3 years you should work in a first organization at least, and then build a strong foundation. That's my uh, suggestion to all of you. Trishul, I hope I have answered your question.
So actually, we have another question from Rohan Jacob. He has raised his hand. Would you
I
mind
think
taking his question?
I think the same people are asking questions. What about the ladies? Other than you, nobody asked. Like I don't see the audience, so I don't know how many ladies are there in this. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Rohan.
So actually, this is something you said earlier. So could you speak on your experience with while hosting interviews and
Mhm.
so more specifically with young interviewees? So
Okay, yeah, good. Actually, as I said, I didn't deliberately put it on the slide, but I'm open to taking questions. I can give one example in Infosys, because Infosys I did a lot of campus compared to HP or IBM, lot of things. So there, so these are some insider tips. Please don't tell others, because then it's like in stock market you have insider trading. It's like insider tips I'm giving you. So there'll be two people sitting across you, right, on the table. Two people, normally two. There won't be a single person. Have you observed that? Two or maybe three. Okay. So you will see that one person will be asking questions to you throughout. Other person will be silent. or he'll be asking minimal questions. If there are 10 questions, some 7 or 8 will be asked by one guy, and the other person will ask maybe 2 or 3. Have you observed that, all of you? Yeah. So don't think that that the second person who is not asking you questions is a useless guy, or is just there for the sake of it, or time pass. Don't think like that. In fact, he is making notes. Okay, he is making notes there. Maybe on the top of the table, or maybe below, or whatever, what mental notes. But he is making notes of what you are discussing, your body language, how you are talking. He'll try to measure your attitude and a lot of things he does. The other person will keep asking questions, right? So I remember where we had gone to Mysore. I think it was 2005, if I'm not, some 16 years ago, to an engineering college. And then I was the vociferous one, and the other guy was doing that noting, that guy. So the second person. So there was a girl who came, and I wanted to test her alertness, and also her, because your style will differ from candidate to candidate. So I started a quick fire round with her, quick fire. It was like, I don't remember the questions now. It was all about current technology, about current affairs, about many other things, and also their awareness about organizations and what's happening in the world or India today. It was a rapid fire question that I set up, and I'm also a quizzer, by the way. It was not mentioned in my interest. I also love doing quizzing, or hosting quiz shows. So the rapid fire started. No, I said, you have got 1 minute. I'll ask you 10 questions, and you have to answer. I was just trying to see her alertness and how quick or how good her IQ is. And that lady bowled both of us. She could answer, I think, 9 or 10 or all 10 questions. Then that person next to me asked, you were so fast, even I could not catch up. Even I could not answer maybe even 3 or 4 of your questions. But the way you asked and way she answered, I was just like watching a ping pong game, like a table tennis game, and I was watching both of you. So, and that girl was selected naturally, for her skills in being very alert and having whatever that IQ. And because we can't test them on software knowledge, or on project management or project methodologies, because they are freshers, we can't test them on that. So what I'm saying is, when you are in that interview, two of them, one silent, one person who keeps talking, more vocal. So what happens is, your gaze tends to go only to that person who is asking you questions, but you don't tend to look at the guy who is not asking you the questions, or asking 2 or 3 questions. Never do that. So look at both of them when you answer the questions. Don't look at one person, which is a tendency, because you start getting nervous. Some of them start sweating. Okay, when these questions come, they start sweating, they become nervous, their hands will start trembling. I've seen that, cases. And some of them even leave in between, suddenly. They get so nervous. So don't do that. Be very calm, quiet, control your nerves, and look at both of them equally, 50-50. Don't look at one person. So what happens when you look at the second person, he will also gain confidence in you, because he is noting down everything. Keep that in mind. That second person is noting down everything and is giving the report, final report. Because after end of every interview, the report has to be prepared and given. We don't do it end of the day. We'll forget. So keep those things in mind as useful tips. Have I answered, or did I divert from your question?
No, sir. I just wanted to hear your experience. Sir.
Yeah.
Thank
So that, yeah, I have a lot of experience, but just one of them I had given you.
Yes.
Okay. Sosha, there's no other question, right?
No, sir. We can move on to the next slide, sir.
Yeah. I want some more girls or ladies to ask, please. Okay. So now coming to the preparation, now you see 3 blocks here: student, campus, corporate. So campus is coming in between, because I was talking about large companies where you also have a campus induction in between. No, after you straight away don't get into the corporate. A lot of companies follow that, big companies. So for the student, again, expectation. I think this is coming for the third time. Setting expectations, so important for you. And change the belief. One very important thing: the degree will get me a job. The very wrong notion, because of our mad education system that we have. If I get a degree, okay, I'll get a job. If I get so much, okay, certainly you'll get that. But in your life, if you have to really make a mark, or you want to grow, after a certain point of time, your degree, your marks, and all hold no water. If you ask me, it's all about your attitude, about your performance, about following the company's policies, and there's so many things. Your hard work, integrity, sincerity, responsibility, accountability, all these things will come into play, later on in your life. Okay, and your degree and your marks is only to get inside. Once you're inside, everyone will look at your work. Nobody will say, oh, you have come from SJCC. Oh, you have got 90%, 99%. Nobody will talk about that later on. They'll only talk about your work. Okay, so keep that in mind. You can't go and boast around, I was a topper in SJCC. It doesn't matter to them when you go into the corporate. You have to be topper in their rating system at the end of the day, because that matters a lot to companies. And when you come on the campus working on skills and attitude, apart from knowledge, there are a lot of attitudinal changes that you need to bring in when you enter a corporate, and working on few skills that you need to improve. It could be soft skills, it could be hard skills, it could be many other skills that you want to improve upon. And case studies and frequent industry interactions, attending, like today you're all lucky. There's so many webinars that keep happening, thanks to the pandemic. Now I see webinars happening quite frequently. So attending webinars, reading through case studies, reading through, doing a lot of research, I think that really helps you when you get into a job. And for the corporate, there's a challenge, like somebody just mentioned, like, the company spends a lot of money on your training and all these things, and then suddenly they resign or they quit. So the cost of attrition there. So frequent learning and development programs that a company has to organize. They can't keep their employees untrained or not being given opportunities in learning and development. Some of the top companies all have a mandate that every year at least 15 to 20 days you have to attend some training, and if you don't achieve that target, it will affect your rating as well. So there are many companies who take that training very seriously, but there are some companies who do not give any respect to training. They think, okay, whatever you have is enough for me, but that is not the right thing. For companies, they always have to keep you abreast with the latest technology or latest trend that is happening, and the trainings should keep on happening in every organization. And the employees should also reciprocate. I have seen many employees even avoiding training. I used to tell them, you're so lucky that you have joined an organization where training is given free of cost. If you go outside, the same thing will cost you lakhs. But then they think, okay, this I'll be bored. I don't know. I know already. So all these things, don't avoid such things. Reward and recognition for a company, as I mentioned, your rating, that is very important. And based on that, your reward and recognition also happens. Not because you got 99% in SJCC or in BBA third year. No, it doesn't work like that way. It's all based on your rating that the company gives end of the year, or there are a lot of companies following quarterly appraisal process. And maintaining transparency. This is again subjective. Not every company is very transparent. Let me tell you that. Transparent in its policy, transparent in its promotion program, or in giving hikes. Most of them try to hide something, but they try to maintain transparency as much as possible. And again, it depends on your manager with whom you are working, because the company may be very transparent, but sometimes what happens is there's a barrier in between who may not want to be transparent. So that you have to, that companies try, but you have to take care of that. Now again, I'm going into the soft skills. Any questions here so far? Perhaps I'm expecting a different person to ask question.
Yes, sir. So there is a question from Shreyanshi. So she asks, what are some of the challenges of reaching out to the children in rural areas for education? Because their parents will want them to start working at a very young age.
Okay. So this has nothing to do with my slides, right? It's a different question. Okay.
Yes, sir. She actually just wanted to ask you based on your experience.
No problem. Because I was a little confused because you're talking about the corporate and suddenly, and it's a very good question, Shreyanshi, that you have asked. And I think I don't remember when, December or November, I written an article as well on this subject. That the more you delay the starting of these schools, especially in the rural areas, you're going to have a problem, especially the girl child. Because in India, in the villages, we may think that 18 is the year of for girls to get married as per the legal age and blah blah blah. But just go to a village, you will even find 15-year-old or even 14-year-old getting married at that age. So what happened during the pandemic is you have already seen some reports in leading newspapers that most of the girls didn't come back to school. When they reopened, I think few weeks ago, 9th, 10th, 11th, or I don't know. So these are the classes that they have the state has reopened, and they saw that most of the girl children were not coming back. Okay, not just girl children. I'll talk about the male child as well. Were not coming back because apparently they got married. Okay, at a young age. Okay, it was not 18 and all. They got married at a very young age. That was one thing. And the other one about the boys, most of them got into farming or helping their father or mother or whatever in the regular tasks that they are doing. So they also didn't come back to school. Once it reopened. So that's a huge risk that that was taken by the government by shutting down in the interest of keeping them healthy because the reason was because of the pandemic because they didn't want the children to come and get affected with the COVID-19 virus. So all these things they tried, or even you heard a lot of teachers getting it. So they wanted to avoid that. So so what we did. Okay, since your question was specifically about me, so what we did. We said, okay, there has to be an intervention here because you can't just wait for government to come up with policies and see all this thing happening. So what we did is as part of Project Nyanshala that was started in September and then in November it gained ground. We started having these classes in a community environment where 15 to 20 children will come into the community center and focus on girls actually, so that they are the most vulnerable to drop out. So making them come, and we used to always also give them nutritional snacks because for children, of course, the fun of meeting other friends is there. But when you give nutritional snacks, that's an added incentive for them. And it is still continuing, by the way. It is still ongoing now, that program under Gnanshala. And what we teach them is not the regular subjects, by the way. The regular subjects, they're already happening online or they're watching it on DD Chandana channel. And that also we are showing as part of Nyanshala. Every 2 hours we have kept for that, the regular sessions. But what we do other than that is, there are some sessions on values, character, or even short gags, like even short films on, say, Charlie Chaplin, very short, where they come and enjoy, they come meet their friends, enjoy, and then they also have nutritional snacks, go back. Recently, last Saturday, we even had a kite flying festival. They have never seen kite in their life. So we taught them how to first make a kite and then fly them in the village. So all these things we try to engage them in such a way that they don't lose that connect over their education and then they go back either get married or go back to their father's or mother's profession, become farmers or go and work in the farms. We didn't want to do that, so we kept on engaging them, and now we have started a new initiative to set up libraries for those kids because today in government schools most of them don't have a proper library. It's all for namesake. Some 2 3 books will be there, not much, and all very old. Nobody will even touch. So we are planning to have a digital library, physical books, pictorial books, which will have stories, and then digital library where we'll have kiosk where they can go and check online content, or offline content available there. So all these things we are trying to do to avoid these children getting diverted. In the city, there is no problem. The problem is for the parents, because they're sitting at home and they have to open their classes, or all these things will be there. But in rural areas, the problem is quite different, because of our experience that I've come across and I'm sharing with you. Any other question?
No, sir. There are no more questions. We can, if you have more slides, we can move ahead to that, sir.
Yeah. So we have few slides now because, as I mentioned, more of interaction, more of sharing my experience than slides, because these are all things I'm sure you might have already seen, and this is just a reiteration of what you have learned already in your in your college syllabus. So interpersonal skills, how do you start? And I'll only give examples which are relevant, real life examples here. Starting sustaining conversation, you make it engaging. Handling conversations with the opposite gender, very important. You have to remember where not to cross any line. Acknowledging any differences between, when you have a discussion or a debate, certainly differences will come up. So how do you acknowledge that? Most important, giving and receiving compliments. We are very poor sometimes in thanking someone, you know, or saying you have done a great job. So that is something that we have to do. Please come across as a positive person always. Okay, keep negativity on the back burner. Avoid bad conversational habits, as talking about the politics and backbiting and etc. That should be, you know, avoided at any cost. About courteousness and thoughtfulness in the workplace, be thoughtful to your colleagues, regardless of your position. Respect your colleagues, uh, and stick to your convictions, but do it as diplomatically as possible. You may disagree with certain points, you know, and you want to stick to that point of view, but do it very diplomatically. It should not cross the line again and then become a very aggressive, like you see in TV debates today. It should not go into that extent. Apologizing again, like thanking, apologizing. Um, there is an ego that comes in between. If I say sorry, what will happen? My value will go down. The ego goes down. So all these things you have to stop worrying about that and start and say sorry or apologize if there's a genuine mistake from your side. Showing appreciation to others, extending your courtesy to any guest consultant or your employees. No, those things that you have to take care. 1 minute, I think. Yeah, these are some etiquettes that you have to follow. Email etiquettes. Actually, this is one area where I take it very seriously. So email etiquette does not necessarily mean looking up to an email and then not doing anything about it. It also means how timely is your response. Okay, somebody sends you an email. I'm talking about official or even personal. You read that email, but you don't respond to it, or you don't react or don't act to it. So after some time, you may even forget. You may think that okay, I'll reply, but you may forget to reply. So the impression that is created at the other side is that one is not interested in what is mentioned there. One number two, oh, he has a very high ego. He doesn't want to respond. No. Or number three is careless about that email. No, he doesn't care about this. He doesn't care for others. So all these kind of negative things start building up on that person who has sent you an email expecting a response. And some people like me, I mean, shamelessly will send a reminder. No, you have not responded, so please respond. No, so there will be some people who do that as well. Some people may not send reminder, but they will think okay, they'll have a negative perception, but in real sense, maybe that person genuinely forgot. Maybe he read and suddenly something came up and he forgot. But you can always do one thing. You can go and tick it and say unread, so that you are aware that there is a mail to be responded. But never keep any mail unresponded. You know, that is something I strongly believe in. It could be any mail, but yeah, there are some mails that will come from Nigeria or now even coming from UK. You have won a lottery. You know, you have won so many prizes. Those mails and all, you should not respond. You should straight away put them into spam, delete, or even maybe approach cyber cell if it is something nasty, or trolling you or something. So I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the real emails that come from the office or from close friends. You have to respond soon. The message has to be very effective. Tone. One more thing that I've learned is when you're angry, don't respond. We say because the tone also goes with the anger. You should wait for some time when you are less angry, then you respond. The meaning completely changes. Once you are having a cool and calm mind. Responding to messages, I've already said. And then you have to take care of a lot of things like enclosures. How do you close how do you start first? Dear, hello, what? A lot of people now officially you have seen, it starts with the name first, Arvind. They don't even mention Arvind, hello Arvind, dear Arvind, hi, nothing, straight. Some people don't even mention that, straight away it starts with the body. So I don't think that is the right thing unless that person is very, very close to you or you are doing very frequent interactions with them. It almost becomes like a WhatsApp message, Do, so always keep the salutations ready, hello, dear, hi, whatever, namaste, whatever you want to start with, that is very important. The closing is also very important. Don't just abruptly close sincerely or warm regards or thanks or whatever. Just keep that in mind with your name following that and with a phone number if possible. Email ID is already there. A lot of people are not aware about importance of CC and BCC. It is so important when to put somebody in CC, when to put somebody in blind CC. Okay, when you're sending a mass emailer, keep them in blind CC, all of them. Otherwise, you'll go crazy, and the people who are there in CC will get bombarded with emails. So if you have more than 20, 30, 50 people or 100 people, keep them in blind CC. CC are those who should be informed or kept informed about it. So keep that in mind. And subject line, very, very important, especially in your corporate world. Your subject line is very important. How you can attract the attention of the reader by putting a nice subject line, which is, and don't put even nonsense. Hi, somebody will put hi, HI. Most of them will go into spam because they read it as spam. So don't do that as well. It should be a nice, simple subject line. Font, spacing, take care of that. Spelling mistake, grammatical mistakes. Today, if you use Gmail, it is already they make it auto corrections. Any spelling mistake or grammar mistakes. So thankfully that is there. So you don't have to worry. Especially when you are interacting with somebody senior in the organization or anyone, please take care of grammatical mistakes and silly mistakes or spelling mistakes. People will immediately notice that. They'll not look at the 90% good things, they will look at the bad things. Phone etiquettes, especially in the, today's world when everyone has a mobile, going into a meeting, taking calls, making calls, do's and don'ts. Like some people have the habit of talking loudly in a meeting. So don't do that. Cell phone etiquettes, keep it in silent mode or switch off mode. Not even vibrating mode. It disturbs others, in a meeting. Online meeting etiquettes, I think most of you will know and you followed it. I'm so happy everyone followed. Joining on time, staying till the end, when to talk, when to listen. Okay, very important, because I've seen in many meetings, online meetings, it goes on and on, on and on. Sometimes you have to abruptly stop them. No, no, wait, 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 please. I want to talk. Or somebody, when you're talking, suddenly interrupts you and starts pitching in. And you get little upset. You are not able to complete your point of view. And then you'll have to politely ask that person to stop and then you continue. So all these things, when to talk, when to listen, is very important. Muting audio and video, I think you all know very well now because of online sessions that are happening. When to mute, when to unmute, audio, all these things that you have to take care. Rephrasing and paraphrasing, so important. Uh, Rephrasing is something that I've said something, but maybe it's not understood. I again try to rephrase that. Paraphrasing is something I spoke for a long time, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, but somehow that message will be clear only if I paraphrase or make it short, make it like a summarized thing and maybe concised content from that, and then I tell, in a few words what I meant with those, with the long words. So that is something called paraphrasing. It is so important when you are meeting with the client. So I'll give you one nice example. You can take it as an anecdote. A very nice, funny incident actually that happened in Infosys, and later on it became like a proper corporate joke. This was in 2005. So there was a team that was working with a banking client in the US Eastern time zone. Most of the banks in the US are in the Eastern zone, New York and those areas. So the meeting was scheduled at 7 p.m. India time, which was about 8:30 a.m. in the US. So also keep in mind that no, in India we start our day late, but if you go to any Western country or you go to even US or other countries, they start the day at 8 o'clock in the morning, and of course they wind up soon. Also, you'll hardly see anyone sitting after 5. 4 onwards they start packing up, and Fridays and all you'll not see them even after lunch. And Saturdays though nobody comes, Sundays nobody comes, right? It's almost like a situation. If you go to an office, you'll be seeing only Indians, there Saturdays or Sundays. You won't see the localites there. So this was a call at 7 p.m. in India, and this team in Bangalore working on a banking project. Okay, this meeting invite or the meeting was, or rather, set up by the client in the US. Okay, he's a local guy, a US guy, and the participants were the team here in Bangalore, a team leader, and also is a project leader as well. So at that point in time, unfortunately, the project leader had to leave early because of some personal emergency. But he said, "I'll take the call while I'm in the bus," because Infosys at that point in time had a very good bus service, internal bus service, not the so contracted bus service where it goes all over Bangalore every half an hour. So he said, "I'll take the 7 o'clock bus, but I'll take it in the bus." And those buses were not AC, by the way, those days. Okay, you know how in India what happens, when you are in that road. Not like the Western countries, even if you are in a crowded road, you can still hear that person clearly. But here, the blaring of horns, the shouting, and all these things will keep happening in the background. So this call started at 7, and the guy at the other end in the US started blasting. Okay, it was not a pleasant call. It was all about an escalation because there were some operations that were not happening in the bank, and banks were opening. It was 8:30 in the morning. Banks were opening there. There were some bugs or there were some issues, and they were having problem. The customers were facing problem in that. And most of the software is developed here in India, the offshore team here. Okay, so he was shouting on top of his voice, like this, all this. So the guy here, I'll not talk from which region he belongs to. So the team leader was the front end now because his project leader was on the bus. Okay, and he had to be mute most of the time because of the external noise. So he started rattling, that client, that these are the things and all. So what is your opinion? He asked this guy. So he said, sir, it's a non-issue. He said, okay. And this happened two more times, a couple of times more, that he kept on saying, and he kept on repeating the same thing, this guy, non-issue. Okay, and the project leader actually could not open his mouth. He is now in the he's now entered some city center, and there's a lot of noise. Or even if he had opened his voice, he was trying to say something, but he could not. Nobody could hear him, talk. So now, after a few minutes, this became a very serious matter because this guy is shouting, is really pissed off, and he says that there's a major problem. And on the other side, this guy is coolly telling him that it's a non-issue. What is going on here? So what he did is, they're very good in escalations, by the way. Indians are also good now, but they are very good. They follow proper escalation metrics. So the mail directly went to project manager, the vice president, head of delivery, and even the seniors, even the leadership team. That no, I don't want to work with such a team which takes everything casually. And this guy, the team leader, is saying that it's a non-issue when my banking operations have almost stopped here. So I'm also thinking of maybe terminating my contract with you after some time. It's a very serious thing. So then people started getting into action. When it went to the top leaders. So the project manager. But by this time, the project leader reached home. He is out of the bus and he has entered home, and his boss, the project manager and delivery head, and all this, they got into a quick call with him to ask him what happened, what went wrong in that, and why were you not there in that meeting. So he said, I was very much there, but I was in the bus. I had to go home. I had some emergency and all these things. And even when I was trying to talk, they could not hear. So you left everything to the project, the team leader. He was a young guy actually, not a fresher, but maybe 1 or 2 years experience. You left everything to him, and such an important call you missed. And see what is happening now. They are going to almost cancel the contract. No, sir, but why? Why are they doing it? This guy answered quite well. He tried to. No, but he kept on saying it's a non-issue. Non-issue, non-issue, non-issue. When you could have answered it and said that, okay, acknowledge the problem and then say I'm solving it. No, sir, but the problem is already solved. By the time I reached home, his team has already done it. And now I think in the next few minutes or in 1 hour, we'll be releasing the new version, and then they won't have any problem. So everything is under control. But he never mentioned non-issue, he said. Okay, the project leader, because he knows this guy very well. They work day in and day out. Then what did he say? You know what he said? I don't know. We are not face to face. I wanted to put this as a quiz. Do you know what he said? That boy, the team lead, the guy who was responsible for rectifying the bug. Can anybody tell me? I can't see the chat message, unfortunately. You know what he said? He said it's a known issue. KNOWN. KNOWN. It's a known issue. So that means he knew that there was an issue and he was working on that issue. Okay, and he was going to solve that issue. Okay, but what happened in all this thing was that NON was coming as a this thing to the other person because of his accent or whatever. No, it was coming across. But the project leader who was there was trying to tell him that no, I think what you have understood is wrong. He's saying it's a known issue and he's working on it. But he was understanding it as non. I told you he's in the bus, so he was trying to tell something, but it was not being clearly understood. And those days there was no video calls and all; it was all audio calls. The audio calls You can't, or there was no chat even, where you can say, hello? Yeah, anything, any question? So he was saying it was known issue when it was understood as a non-issue. So how important is this paraphrasing or rephrasing? So important. They almost lost the deal, right? Because of that one small word, known versus non. And you can't change somebody's accent overnight. It's not easy. And even accent changes. If you go to US, there will be one accent. You go to UK, there will be a proper accent. When you go to Australia, it is a different accent. When you go to Sweden, Germany, the other, so many, like if you go to Middle East, there will be some accent. So accent keeps changing. You can't try to convince anyone by saying, okay, this is the right accent. But there, it's very important to paraphrase or rephrase, whatever you say, and make it very clear. So this is how communication is so important. It's a make or break sometimes. Any question here?
Sir, actually, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but the students actually have another session that's lined up right now. So if you wouldn't mind, could you please wind up, sir?
Yeah.
We have now come to the end of our session. On behalf of the management of St. Joseph's College of Commerce, I extend my most sincere gratitude to the Almighty God for making today's event a resounding success. Our dear Principal, Reverend Father Daniel Fernandez S.J., Registrar Dr. Nirmala Joseph, Vice Principals Ms. Neha Rai and Dr. Raja, HOD of the BBA Department Dr. Ruxana Anjum, and Faculty Coordinator Ms. Ravina Roy. This event was made possible through your kind cooperation and guidance. A deep sense of gratitude to our speaker, Mr. Arvind Kamath. Thank you, sir, for your wonderfully delivered session. Although we had to cut it short, your insights, the insight tricks, and all the knowledge that you imparted through the session will really benefit us in the days to come. Thank you so much, sir.